Mixed flow, so if everyone comes and lies on the backs. Right. So feet hip distance apart. Oh, hang on. Sorry, I thought that was Andrew coming on. Right, feet hip distance apart. So we're going to work on our connection first of all. So we want to feel connected underneath both feet, underneath the lumbosacral junction, TL junction, both shoulder blades and the back of the head. So if you're not feeling very connected, let's just work on a few postural cues to get better connected. So we're just going to shift the weight from side to side in both feet. So just trying to create a little bit more balance from side to side. You want to feel the weight equal. So just shift the weight until you feel like you've got the weight equal on both sides. And then think about whereabouts you're feeling the weight on the foot. Are you feeling it on the inside or are you feeling it on the outside? If you're feeling it more on the inside of the foot, you're going to try and lower the outside of the foot down towards the floor without lifting the inside. If you're feeling it more on the outside, you're going to try and do the opposite. So you're going to try and bring the inside of the foot down towards the floor without lifting the outside. Okay. So now we should be feeling equal from foot to foot and equal from the inner arch to the outer arch on both feet. So then we're going to work our way up to the lumbosacral junction, so junction between the lower back and pelvis. So we're going to just start to tilt the pelvis forwards into an anterior tilt, lifting the spine away from the floor, and then reverse peel the spine into the floor, taking the pelvis into a posterior tilt, anterior tilt, posterior, so alternating between anterior and posterior, lumbar flexion, lumbar extension, feeling that movement in the spine. And then you want to stop in the midpoint between the two end ranges. Lower back should be flat on the floor. There shouldn't be any gap underneath both hands, underneath your back. You shouldn't be able to get your hands underneath your back. And you should now be in a neutral pelvis and neutral spine. And now you'll feel better connection underneath your lumbosacral junction and the floor. So we'll work our way up to the TL junction. So we want to imagine that the ribs and pelvis are like the pages of a book. So we want the pelvis and the rib cage to be parallel with each other. So we're going to work to close in that book. So the pages are closed. So we don't want the open book, because with that you get lumbar extension, rib flaring. So we're going to pull the pages together so ribs and pelvis are parallel. And you should be feeling nice and connected between your TL junction now. If you put your hands on your rib cage, and you'll feel that the ribs are down towards the pelvis, they shouldn't be sticking up in the air. So then we'll work our way up to the shoulders. So shoulder blades again, they want to be equal from side to side. So shift the weight from side to side until you can feel it both sides equally. And the shoulders themselves, they want to be in a neutral position. So we want to try and get away from elevated, protracted and internally rotated. So we're going to activate the muscles underneath and behind. And we're going to try and pull the shoulders into external rotation, depression towards the back pockets. And we're going to have slight retraction, but we don't want to be pinned back into the floor. So you don't want to pull your shoulder blades right back together. So they'll feel nice and neutral now. And then we'll work our way up to the head. So the head wants to push straight back down towards the floor. So we don't want to tilt into neck extension. We don't want to go into neck flexion. We're going straight back down towards the floor. The muscles at the front of the neck will start to activate a bit more, so you might feel them come on. Okay, so now we should be feeling that connection under both feet equally. Lumbosacral junction, TL junction, both shoulder blades and the back of the head. So if we put one hand on the chest, one hand on the tummy, and we're going to think about our breath now. So we're going to try and get our breath in the right order. So as we take a breath in, hand on the tummy wants to lift. On the breath out, the hand on the tummy wants to lower. We don't want any movement from the hand in the chest. On the chest, should I say, not in the chest. So obviously, you guys have done this before, so just use this as like a bit of a meditation today. So just try to focus on your breath. Try not to let your mind think of anything else. Try not to let it wander. If you feel like it's going off somewhere, thinking about what you're having for your lunch or what you're doing later in the day, just pull it right back. Focus on lifting that hand on the tummy with the breath in. Breathe in through your nose, out through your mouth, through pursed lips, like you're blowing through a straw. Okay, if you feel like your breath's in the right order, put your hands around your waist. Try not to let your shoulders push forwards. And we're going to create the 360-degree breath. So as we take a breath in, we want to feel all the muscles around the abdominal wall expand. So you should be feeling this equal from front to back and from side to side. So it's like a cylinder, like of air expanding outwards, or a balloon, like you're blowing up a balloon, so the air distributes the whole way around equally. If you're struggling to feel those muscles, if you just cough, feel them expand under your hands. Use that as a bit of a wake up for your brain to let the brain know where the muscles are. Do it in stages if you need to, so poke into the front muscles, feel those expand. When you've got those, you're going to go around the side, poke into there, feel those expand. So pushing your thumbs outwards. And then when you've got them, you'll grab hold of the back, so give the back muscles a bit of a prod. And then feel those muscles trying to push the thumbs down towards the floor. And then try and combine all those together, so we're feeling at 360 degrees. Think about your pelvic floor as well. As you're breathing in, you want to feel your pelvic floor move downwards towards your feet. So your pelvic floor is going to mimic what your diaphragm's doing. It's going to go in the same direction on the breath in. And then it's going to relax on the breath out. Okay, so now we've got the 360 breath, we're going to work on our brace. So we don't want to clench tense, we don't want to suck the belly button in. It's an outward push, so we're going to breathe in 360 degrees, And then do the outward push, so imagine that you're farting before you take your breath out. So you should feel those muscles active throughout the breath in and out. You're going to try not to let the muscles relax and pull away from your hands. So in life, when you're doing anything that needs more stabilisation, you're going to need to create this brace. So whether you're carrying the shopping or you're lifting weights, okay, so we've got our breath in the right order, we've got our 360 breath and our brace, and we're fully connected with the floor. So we're just gonna start the flow by just feet hip distance apart still. We're gonna tilt the pelvis slightly posterior, peel the spine away from the floor, lift the bum into the air. So the hips are sort of parallel, nice straight line with the thighs and the hips. And then reverse peel the spine one by one, all the way down to the floor. Pelvis into a neutral position, don't go into the anterior tilt. And then we're going to tilt it backwards again, lifting the bum in the air. Hold. And then reverse peel down towards the floor. Neutral pelvis again. Try not to let the pelvis tilt anterior. Really control that pelvis and spine. Posterior tilt. Lifting the spine off the floor. Bum in the air. And lower down. Just do 2 more of these, and then we're going to go into some reaches. So tilt and lift. And lower. Tilt and lift. And lower. And the next one, we're going to tilt, backwards, lift, and then reach. So your right arm will reach across to the left side of the body and over the left shoulder. And then we're going to tilt, lift, and reach with the left side, left side to the right side. And lower back down. Lift, tilt and lift and reach. Tilt, lift and reach. And lower. We'll do 2 more each side. Tilt, lift and reach. And lower. Tilt, lift and reach. 1 more each side. Tilt, lift and reach. And lower. Last one. Tilt, lift and reach. And back down. Okay, so now we are going to lift one leg in the air and lower. Opposite leg, lower. As we're bringing the hip into flexion, we want to slightly externally rotate and abduct at the same time. So alternating legs, controlling this in the pelvis and lower back. This movement's coming from the hip. And then we're going to, on the next one, bring both legs up into the air. So before you lift, we're going to breathe 360, create your outward brace and lift. Again, we're going to, as we're flexing the hip, externally rotate and abduct, feet into a neutral, well, should stay in a neutral position. It should be slightly dorsiflexed. So lifting and lowering. As we're lowering them back down, we're going to slightly internally rotate, but not too far. So we're internally rotating back into a neutral position. Last one, we're going to keep the legs in the air now, in the 3-month supine position. So the first position developmentally that when we're babies, this is 3-month-old, is the first position we can achieve postural stabilisation when we lay on our backs. So we're just going to hold this position. Feet higher than the knees, knees over the hips, and hips at 90 degrees, hips externally rotated and abducted slightly, and then the feet, they don't want to be flopping around, they want to be dorsiflexed, pointing towards the head in a neutral position. I'm just going to hold this position, breathe in 360 degrees. Okay, I'm going to take the fingertips up into the air, lift the head slightly, and we're just going to look to the side that we're rolling, and we're going to roll to one side, nice and controlled, roll back, nice and controlled. Shoulders and pelvis moving at the same time, so we've got a Lego body, so we don't want to disconnect, we don't want the pelvis to rotate first and then shoulders, or we don't want the shoulders to go first and then pelvis. As we're going onto the side, just keep the legs apart at the moment, so we're not bringing them together. And the spine wants to be nice and straight, so we don't want to end up with a banana spine when we're on the side. Imagine that you're trying to reach for something with the top arm. And get stacked up on top of that shoulder. Don't let the shoulder pull forwards. Okay, so the next one, what we're going to do is we're going to roll onto our side, up into the lower oblique sit. So we want it to be a nice smooth movement. And then we're going to roll back down onto the other side, up into lower oblique sit. And back down. Roll it into lower oblique sit. So going side to side, I might just have to pull myself away from the mirror a little bit because I'm banging into it. So back down, lower oblique. When we're coming onto our side, we don't want to end up in this banana spine and shoulder forward, so shoulder active, nice straight spine again. Back down. And up. And then the next one, we're going to come up into high oblique sit. So up, back down into low oblique sit, onto the other side, up, back down, and up. and down and up. Nice smooth movements. Next one, we're going to come up into a high oblique sit and then lift. And then lower, slowly, slowly down. Hand down, elbow down, onto the back, up and lift. Down, hand down, forearm down, roll. So you might need a little bit more space for this. I'm kind of moving all over the place at the minute. And then this next one, we are going to plant the hand down. So we're in this high oblique sit, and we're going to swing the leg forwards into tripod. So we're bringing it round and then back. And up and round. And then back down. So keeping that hand on the floor, pulling that round into tripod. Well, not into tripod because you've only got one hand on the floor at the minute. And then from here, we're going to do some hinging. So both hands on the floor. Okay, and we're going to hinge backwards. And back up. And back. And we're trying to lengthen through the spine. So try not to round. And especially as we're going backwards, we don't want to go into this flexed position. So we're really trying to fight to bring the spine into a nice, straight and long position. And turn this way. Okay, so then we're going to come up into our high kneel. Pelvis level with the floor, so we're going to pull the pelvis down. Try and create that external rotation in the hip. Try not to be too narrow with the foot. If you need something next to you to come up, then just grab hold of something like a chair or a bedside table. So we're going to curl the back foot under. Lean into it and stand. Knee tracking the second and third toe. Try not to let the pelvis shift. And then we're going to pull that leg back, lower down, and then hinge. So we're hinging in the high kneel. Back up, forwards, stand, back down, and hinge. And up, stand, back down. Only go as far as that back knee allows. So if the knee's sore, coming into too much knee flexion, that's fine. Just go as far as you can in the hinge, making sure the hinge is the hip, not from the spine. Come up. Back down, making sure the pelvis is set every time. Hinge back and stand, back down, hinge, and then we're going to go from the high knee on whichever side you're on. Imagine you've got your ball, grab hold of it, squeeze it together, and we're going to stand and turn, and then stand and turn, stand, turn, just do a couple more. And then you're on the opposite side, the opposite high kneel. So we're going to get the foot into the right position, so we don't want to be too narrow. Bring it out to the side, pelvis level with the floor, neutral spine. Curl the back foot under, lean forwards, stand, down, and hinge. And up, stand. Making sure that pelvis is set, making sure the knee doesn't cave in. Slowly lower down, don't rush that movement. So up and down, just in your own time, nice and steady. Get that pelvis reset every time, hinging from the hips backwards again, only going as far as that back knee will allow. Put the hands down and we're going to hinge in this position. So hinge backwards. Again, feeling where that movement's coming from, so you want to make sure it's from the extremities, so hips and knees and ankle, not the spine. Spine wants to stay nice and long. So not rounded through here. Pull the spine down as much as you can. Again, only go as far back as you can with that back knee. Okay, so now we're going to keep one hand on the floor and we're going to bring that front leg back into a high oblique sit and then come round. Back round with that foot into tripod and back down. Try and keep the spine nice and long and straight. Don't let yourself slump. Back round. So lifting and lowering through to the different positions. Imagine you trying to reach for something with that free hand. And then we're going to end up in that oblique sit. And arms up into the air. Nice long straight spine. Rotate the hips. Knees up to the ceiling. And then go the opposite way. Knees up. Rotate to the opposite side. Making sure we've got that nice long spine in the middle, so in the tall sit, round, And then we're going to finish up in the tall sit. And we're just going to rock from side to side. And we want to shift the weight over to one side. So we're going to be putting the knee down onto the floor, lifting through, round into bear. It's not bear, into quadruped, sorry. Brain's not on. And then back down, into tall sit. And then we're going to rock the other way, round, into quadruped. And then back, into tall sit. Down and back. Keep the torso nice and connected so the shoulders and pelvis are moving at the same time, so try not to let them disconnect. Okay, and then we're going to stay in this quadruped, down into low quadruped. So elbows in line with the ears, find your neutral lower back, so tilting the pelvis backwards and forwards. Make sure the knees are a little bit wider than the hips. Find your neutral, shoulders active, push the floor away with the forearms. Shoulder blades down to the back pockets. Upper back nice and long. Try not to be too rounded, so pulling the upper back towards the floor. And we're going to hinge backwards. Through the hip. And forwards through the hip. Don't let the lumbar spine and pelvis change position. So as you're flexing the hip backwards, you don't want to flex the lumbar spine. As you're extending the hips, you don't want to extend the lumbar spine. Spine and pelvis stay completely still. Focus on your breath as well, keep breathing. And then we're going to just get the forearms parallel with each other now. And extend one elbow, rotate up to the ceiling, and then down. Extend the other elbow, rotate to the ceiling. So going from side to side. Feeling that rotation through the entire spine. And then we're going to extend both elbows at the same time, so up and down. Trying not to lose the position of the spine. So this movement is mainly coming from the elbows and the wrists and the hips. And then we're going to go into 6 month prone. So by going from, we just need to shift the weight forwards over the hands. And then we're going to flex backwards through the hip, down into lower obliques, and oh my god, my brain, into low quadruped, and we're low quadruped hinge. And then we're going to hinge forwards, extend the elbows over the hands, shifting the weight over the hands into 6 month prone, hinge the hips backwards, down into low quadruped, Hinge forwards, extending the elbows, weight shifting over the wrists. Try not to lose the lower back into extension, so we're keeping that neutral spine. Hinge backwards into low quadruped and forwards and back and forwards into your quadruped position. So bring the knees a little bit further forwards. Find your neutral spine, so tilt the pelvis backwards and forwards. Upper back nice and flat and long. Shoulders active. Make sure the neck's not tilted into extension. Fingertips spread wide. Middle finger pointed forwards. And then we're going to hinge backwards and forwards. Think about what your spine's doing. Really try and feel the movement, what's happening. See if you can feel the spine moving as we're going backwards and forwards. There shouldn't be any movement in the spine other than corrections that you're making if you need to. And so from this hip flex position in this quadruped, we're going to pull forward, so extending the hip, and then take 1 foot forwards, and then we're going to hinge backwards. And then forwards, bring that leg back, and then quadruped hinge. And then as we come forwards, we'll take the other leg forwards, and we're going to hinge. Forwards, bring that leg back, hinge backwards in your quadruped. 1 leg forwards, long through the spine, hinge back. Bring that leg back, hinge backwards again. Last time, so bringing that foot forwards, and then we're hinging. And forwards, bring that leg back. Let's work on the pelvis again, so find neutral. Push the floor away with the hands, fingertips spread wide, long spine. Try and get that upper back into a neutral position or extended position. And then we're going to curl the back feet, and we're going to lift the bum in the air, knees off the floor and lower. So create your 360 breath and your brace as you're lifting your bum and your knees into the air, so that you don't tilt into that anterior tilt as you lift up. So lifting and lowering. And then just give your legs a little bit of a rest. This is one of the more challenging positions there, because you're having to support through all your weight just through your hands and your feet. Find your neutral again. Upper back nice and long. Create your brace. Lift your knees off the floor, and then we're going to hinge the hips backwards. So bum's going a little bit higher in the air into high bear. Keep the spine nice and long, and then come down, back down into low bear. Then hinge back into a high bear. So bum's a bit higher in the air. And then down into low bear, high bear, and then down into quadruped. Give your legs a shake off, give your arms a shake off. Reset, neutral spine, neutral pelvis, active shoulders, long spine. Forwards a little bit. Curl the back feet under, lift the bum, hinge the hips backwards, walk the hands back into your squat, just as low as you can be, comfortably in a nice upright position, so try not to be too rounded. And we're just going to rotate the hips and the knees. So one knee's coming down towards the floor and you're going to rotate towards the opposite hip. And then back into your squat, rotate the other way, back into your squat, rotate the other way, into your squat, rotate, do one more each side, and then back into your squat, and we're just going to stand. Reset the pelvis, so make sure you've got your neutral spine. Create your 360-degree breath. And we're going to just put one hand on the tummy, one hand on the back and pelvis, and just start to lower down and feel what's happening in the pelvis and spine. Make sure that you don't get that anterior tilt at the start and then come back up. Again, feeling what the pelvis is doing. Back down. And up. Nice and controlled. Down. And up. Really try and visualise what's happening now. Instead of using your hands, just try and think about that movement, or trying to stop that movement from happening in the pelvis and spine. Nice and controlled. Just do two more. And then one more. And we're done.